Every day, you make decisions: what to buy, who to trust, what to believe. But here's the real question. Are those decisions really yours, or are they designed? This channel breaks down the psychology behind everything. I'm Shrest, and this is where we decode the world.
Okay, so have you ever noticed this weird thing about money? Why is it that handing over a crisp 500 rupee note feels like a real transaction, right? But scanning a QR code for that exact same amount, it feels like almost nothing. It's the same amount of money, but the feeling is completely different. And believe me, this isn't just some random quirk. It's a deep psychological thing that modern payment systems like UPI have pretty much perfected. All right, so here's how we're gonna break this down. We'll kick things off with what we're calling the 500 rupee paradox. Then we're gonna dive into two really important ideas from behavioral economics, the pain of paying and psychological decoupling. After that, we'll see how all this stuff creates what's known as a frictionless economy. And finally, we'll talk about the real cost of making payments just so easy. Okay, let's dive right in. We're starting with something you've probably felt 100 times. It's a simple, everyday experience that actually reveals a huge truth about how our brains think about value and loss. This, right here, is the big question we're going to tackle. I mean, really think about it. When that physical note leaves your hand, you feel it. You see it go. But a quick digital scan, you hear a little chime, you put your phone away, and you just move on. The financial result is exactly the same, but how it feels, totally different. So, why is that? It really just comes down to this simple but huge difference. Paying with cash, that's a physical loss. Your brain processes it as something real, something tangible that you've given away. But a UPI payment, that's just an abstract event. It's numbers moving on a screen. And that one little difference, well, it changes everything. So this feeling actually has a name, and it brings us to a really core concept in behavioral economics. It's called the pain of paying. So the pain of paying, that's the official term for that little sting you feel when you spend money. You know, that moment of hesitation or maybe a tiny bit of regret. And the key thing to understand is that the pain gets stronger the more visible and physical the payment is. The more real it feels to hand over the money, the more it actually hurts your brain. And the guy who really pinned this down is a behavioral economist named George Lowenstein. His work was a game changer because it showed that we're not these perfectly rational robots when it comes to money. He proved that spending is packed with emotion, and that emotion is a huge factor in how we spend. Just think about all the senses involved when you use cash. You actually touch the money. You literally see it leave your hand and go to someone else. You might even feel your wallet get a little bit lighter. All of these signals are screaming to your brain, hey, we just lost something real. And look, this isn't just us not liking it. Our brains are literally hardwired with something called loss aversion. It's an evolutionary instinct. We are programmed to avoid losing things, and that ancient alarm bell goes off every time we part with physical cash. But okay, how powerful is this feeling? Like really? Well, for that, we've got to look at the work of Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. His research completely changed how we think about making decisions, especially when it comes to risk and money. And what he found is absolutely mind-blowing. The pain of losing, say, 500 rupees feels twice as powerful as the joy you get from gaining that same 500 rupees. Let that sink in. It's a 2-to-1 psychological hit, and that explains exactly why the very real feeling of losing cash acts as such a powerful brake on our spending. Okay, so if our brains have this built-in alarm system for cash, how do things like UPI just waltz right past it? It's not an accident, you know. It's by design. They use this really clever trick that is, for all intents and purposes, hacking your brain's perception of loss. And this brain hack has a name. It's called decoupling. All it means is creating a separation between the good part, getting something new, and the bad part, paying for it. The bigger the gap you create between the purchase and the payment, whether in time or just in feeling, the weaker that pain signal gets. And this is UPI's superpower, right? It's the master of decoupling. There's no physical cash changing hands. You don't see your wallet getting any thinner. The money itself becomes invisible, abstract. And because of that, we get emotionally disconnected from the actual financial loss that's happening. So let's just put it side by side. With cash, you've got a physical handover. It's a tangible loss that hits our emotional centers and creates what we call spending friction. With UPI, you have an abstract scan. It's an invisible event that our more rational brain centers handle, and the result? Totally frictionless spending. So, what happens when this little psychological trick scales up to millions, even billions of transactions a day? Well, it doesn't just change how you spend. When everybody's spending habits shift at the same time, it starts to create massive waves across the whole economy. Well, the first and most obvious thing that happens is this. When you get rid of the friction, you get rid of that natural pause for thought, that moment where we might reconsider a purchase. That pain of paying, it's actually a feature, not a bug. It's our brain's natural speed bump for spending. And when it's gone, impulse buys go way up. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The data is super clear on this. Study after study shows that when we use digital payments, we tend to spend more, especially on things like impulse buys, junk food, and other little treats. We even tend to tip more, all because the payment just doesn't feel as real. This quote from one of the sources we looked at just nails it. Those little 100 or 200 rupee payments, they just don't register one by one. They feel more like points in a game than actual money leaving your account. The pain is completely delayed, all bundled up into one big, nasty shock when you finally get around to checking your balance. Which brings us to our last and maybe most important point. We get the psychology now, we see the economic impact, but what is the true cost of making every single one of our transactions totally and completely painless? So if you remember one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. The value of your money didn't change. A rupee is still a rupee. But by making the transaction invisible, digital payments have changed your perception of its value in that moment. And as we all know, it's really easy to ignore what you can't see. So I want to leave you with a little mental tool you can use. The next time you're about to scan a QR code, just stop for 1 second and ask yourself this simple question. The answer might just reintroduce that little bit of healthy friction and help you be a more conscious, deliberate spender. Because at the end of the day, the amazing convenience of UPI has a hidden psychological price tag. And understanding that price and learning how to manage it might just be one of the most important financial skills we can learn in this digital age. Because as it turns out, painless spending can be a very expensive habit indeed.